Hey everyone, welcome to this special 1 hour episode on cannabis tech. I'm your host, Christina Etter, and today we are tackling one of the hottest topics in the industry right now, the DEA's recent move to reclassify cannabis from a Schedule 1 substance to a Schedule 3 substance. Now, this monumental shift has the potential to shake up absolutely everything from business operations to medical research, even how we disseminate the information and education that consumers need. So, whether you're already a part of the industry, a consumer, or you're just curious about the future of cannabis, this episode is going to be packed with some valuable information and maybe a few surprises along the way. So, I hope you're going to join us as we explore the highs and lows of cannabis rescheduling. So let's dive into these questions. How do you think the rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 will shake up things for you and your business?
Yeah, well, this is an incredibly positive first step towards legalization. It's important to know this is not cannabis legalization, but this is, again, an incredible first step in the right direction. For the industry, what this means is that the crushing tax burden of 280E becomes a thing of the past. Once we get through this period that we're in here and we get to moving cannabis to Schedule 3, cannabis businesses will be able to take the ordinary tax deductions that all other small businesses can take for granted. And that's huge. That's possibly a couple $1 billion back in the pockets of the industry every year.
The greatest and immediate shakeup and change in the industry will be in public perception. We now have, for the first time in 50 years, the federal government confirming that there is a medical benefit to cannabis. And that will change perception for marijuana and patients who seek it, and allow people who previously may have shied away from it to be willing to investigate it and to try it and find the benefits and change their life for the better.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the answer is Schedule 3 drug is going to allow for human testing in studies, and so what we've lacked is the ability to have a, conversation without semantics. And when it comes to having an educated conversation about cannabis, Schedule 3 is going to allow for human testing now to take place. And so the importance of that is that now we can have finally the opportunity to understand the endogenous cannabinoid system. So, the medical community has unfortunately not been allowed to learn about this, know about it, study it in medical school, or apply it to their patients since 1934, when it stopped becoming the number one prescribed use medicine in America. And so, for whatever reason that was, here we are, and Schedule 3 is going to allow for all those things to take place.
Okay, well, just so that you know, we are under British rule. So I believe the US rescheduling will mean a lot for our banking because we do deal internationally with the US, and to be able to provide that, almost get rid of that piece of stigma that's holding that banking piece ransom. I think that might help as well. And also with our doctors here in Bermuda, they are a little nervous about getting into this space, but I feel that this rescheduling can help, like I said, ease that stigma and allow them to come into their own association and be able to prescribe cannabis. So I really feel that it will have an impact. Not sure quite how much, but I really think it'll do something for this island.
Everybody thinks it's a turn off and turn on switch, and what we've learned over this many years, especially with the regulations and everything that goes on board with becoming a licensed company in any fashion, everything is a timeline. It nothing happens overnight. Nothing's contrary to everybody's belief of getting rich in the cannabis industry overnight. There's no such thing. It's almost 14 years for myself and my son. It's a process. Are we excited? Yeah, absolutely. I think anything we can do, to get those steps closer towards what is considered normalcy, Safety is a huge factor for us and has been. Banking, anything that gets us to get to that point, we're excited about.
Really optimistic that the that 280E going away is going to allow cannabis companies to grow more sustainably and to grow in ways that they can be spending money on reaching out to consumers directly and growing their branding. Right now, when a cannabis company spends any money on advertising, that's like a dollar spent. There's no tax write off, as in like most consumer uh, businesses. And so we are anticipating an influx in our customers' advertising and their usage of our data, and we're ready. I mean, I think that one of the silver linings in cannabis being a kind of a closed market and needing to kind of create our own tools to comply with, what was federal prohibition, is the really innovative ways that we have learned how to advertise cannabis. So we can do programmatic advertising, we can do direct mail, and we can do it all compliantly. So really reaching only audiences that are 21 plus. So I think there'll be a boom for the consumer outreach and advertising and awareness in general.
We're hoping that our clients will become more profitable. One, because a lot will probably become Schedule 3 compliant, so they will be fully federally legal and have all the benefits of a federally legal company. And then there'll hopefully additionally be benefits with 280E and tax issues. I think it's yet to be seen whether the 280E tax benefit will be extended to non-Schedule 3 compliant businesses. For example, like the dispensaries on the street that are not medical or don't have pharmacists. I'm not sure if 280 will be impacted, that they'll be impacted by the 280 benefits. But I remain hopeful that they will. And I also think that it will be a wake-up call to investors who may have stopped looking at the cannabis industry in favor of AI or other sort of more trendy, more recently trendy industries.
Look, I think there's the obvious. The safe banking is great. 280E going away is a huge win. I think really what is going to be most impactful is access to traditional capital. Right, there are Schedule 3 drugs that are backed by different institutional investors, which opens up M&A activity for the industry. I think for us, what we're really hoping for at some point is visibility on interstate commerce. Our business is really built on scale, and being able to get plants and genetics into the larger market throughout the U.S. would be a huge win.
It is going to make quite an impact. And, there's two camps. There's people that just like, I want descheduling or nothing. And then there's those of us who are like, hey, at least rescheduling is getting us that many steps closer. Yes, it's not fully decriminalizing the plant. It's not removing the taboo and stigma that's been established around the plant for the last century, thanks to the early days of what everyone references reefer madness with the Anslinger war on drugs. But I think it is going to make a difference. It is going to finally allow the masses to acknowledge that there are medical benefits to the plant, and we already know the buy-in is there, right? The Pew data has shown that, my gosh, 4/5 of the population at minimum are in support of some level of legalization. So I think this step towards it being Schedule 3 from Schedule 1, that does answer the masses of people do see the benefits from a medical standpoint. And so I do think it's very much a good thing. Again, I would love for it to be descheduled too. I'd love for our government to do the same thing Mexico did and say, hey, it is not constitutional
this
to
rescheduling is going to have a monumental effect on the whole industry, including us. I would say number one is obviously with Schedule 3, the product would be more available nationwide at a federal level. So I think from that point of view, from consumers' benefit angle, this is a tremendous move. And on the other hand, as we all know, in the past, so many people were put behind bars for using cannabis, this will no longer be the case. So I think for the society, for humanity, it's a
Right.
major move.
So we do think it will affect us, but not necessarily in a bad way. Where I think a lot of companies in our space think that, if you're moving cash or you're working with financial institutions, it could be something negative. We look at it as a positive development, one that should have happened, actually, we believe, years ago. But we still think there's always going to be cash involved in the marketplace. We do think that rescheduling, though, is going to create a little more bureaucracy, more red tape. It's going to require more regulations. And so there's going to be more work on our side as a cash management and logistics company. There's going to be more work for the cannabis businesses. And then the regulators. There are going to be new rules and regulations that have to be followed. So it's going to be a little bit more work for everybody.
Well, what's really exciting is that operators would be able to deduct costs of selling their product, right? So what you're talking about, marketing, payroll, advertising, for the purposes of federal income tax filings. So what's exciting about that is systems are going to be more valuable, and that's what we built, the systems. And so we're well positioned here because our ERP is the most robust tracking tool in the market. And so we're excited to leverage those features in a meaningful way. And our actually founders come from fintech. And so for them, the idea of building more automated payments, credit, enforcement of terms, all in the back of FDIC insured banking is really exciting. I also think it opens up the opportunity for multi-state expansion. It becomes more attractive when you have these write-offs and you have the opportunity to not have to copy and paste the exact model in each state. And so I think a lot of opportunities open up with the rescheduling.
Are you eyeing any juicy opportunities with the rescheduling? Talk to us about the things that you think are going to be positive moving forward on day one.
Yeah, well, so being able to take tax deductions means that they'll be able to grow your business and be able to, let's look at ancillary businesses that have been mentioned that, have a huge backlog usually of AR right now because their clients who are plant touching businesses are unable to deduct the costs associated with their services. That, marketing services, compliance services, you name it, that changes overnight. So that's going to allow an incredible moment where the industry will be able to grow as businesses can reinvest capital back into their businesses and grow within their states. Now that said, what's really important is that the industry invest in federal policy reforms that are needed for the industry to really reach its potential, which is descheduling cannabis, allowing interstate commerce, allowing for better access to banking services and other protections that will be afforded under federal law. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to see the industry not only be able to grow and because of this tax burden being lifted, but also being able to reinvest and redouble efforts in changing federal laws and state laws for that matter once and for all until we do get to a place where the industry is treated fairly and equally under federal law, just like any other responsible regulated business sector in the country. And I think we're certainly closer than we've ever been, but I think we're closer than a lot of people think to that moment.
I don't know if there'll be a whole lot of change on day one. What I'm hoping for eventually is that we get some clarity from the government, from the Justice Department, something like the Cole memo that was issued under the Obama administration that gives us clarity in what they're going to let us do and not let us do. Right now, there's a cloud of uncertainty for physicians, what's permitted, what's not permitted. And so hopefully with this rescheduling, we'll get some very clear rules. I'm also hoping that we get some consistency nationwide so that the rules, regulations, and standards of care are the same throughout the country, and we're not playing this state by state game.
We'll wait and see, right? That's the unfortunate circumstance that cannabis has always had to be in, is wait and see, because you just don't know. I mean, it's still, again, at a Schedule 3 drug, you're still considering it as more harmful than every painkiller that's prescribed, every anti-inflammatory that's prescribed, that are killing millions of people. What the Purdue Pharma, has just settling these billion-dollar lawsuits on killing 13 million people. Can you imagine any other industry being allowed to kill 13 million people and exist at all. And so, I take these things personally as they come and wait and see, unfortunately, because it's still not where we need to be, and acknowledging the truth about this plant.
Okay, so we have had a problem with the fact that we have an unregulated market, and the fact that we still have businesses in this space. And I think it will give them an opportunity to be able to branch out. And I think for us as the BCA, we can finally get our training out there, and we can finally be able to have people understand that it's a need for the training, because right now they don't feel like it's a need because it's an unregulated market. But the fact that this scheduling can come into effect, it'll change, like you said, a lot of perceptions, and then things will start to normalize for us, for the island, and for everybody that really wants to be able to partake in taking medicinal cannabis. So we have a lot of people here that really want to be able to get their hands around it, but they can't because we have such harsh stipulations here. So I think I'll do something. I have a couple of things up my sleeve, can't tell you just yet, but I am looking to put something as a medical cannabis tourism package together. So when things are a little bit more normal and regulated here, this will be a destination for medical cannabis tourism. And I'm putting my stamp
One
on
thing
that.
for us, as you can see, we're a very visual company as well. The brand is, hopefully we feel it's being very well accepted across the board. The big thing for us is, once again, this falls under normalcy. Being able to market our product and our brand across all platforms. To be able to see the brand on TV commercials and being able to have things out there that we're getting shut down on Instagram and YouTube and all those things. I think there's once again it's a time related thing for all of these, but I think the acceptance is going to become a lot quicker than it has been. I think we're going to see cannabis being accepted on levels that and much quicker than we ever anticipated.
For us, I think this is actually going to open up a whole new channel of businesses, a new vertical, which will be the Schedule 3 compliant businesses and the companies that are going to rush to become Schedule 3 compliant, new businesses that will emerge because there's a federally legal opportunity. And most of those will be in the pharmaceutical-esque space. We're talking not necessarily Johnson & Johnson level, although I think that they might get in, that level might get involved, but sort of mom and pop pharmacy types of medical businesses will emerge.
Again, I think it does go back to capital. I mean, up until this point, the industry's really been it's been funded by family offices or high net worth individuals, and the cost of capital is obnoxious, right? It's not sustainable. So you're going to see increase in M&A activity. You're going to see new capital come into be infused in the market. I think what's really exciting for us is a shift in focus over towards scientific and medical research around cannabis, really opening up that opportunity as a leading provider of again, pest and disease free plants, genetically identical, performance tested plants. Getting these cultivars into the hands of researchers, we think will be a huge net positive, not just for conception, but for the larger cannabis market.
By rescheduling it to Schedule 3, obviously it will open up the market to many more players. And a lot of those would be much better financially supported, backed players, including, let's call it, big corporations, big tobacco, big pharma. I think finally they will have an opportunity to play in this game. And I think the industry will benefit from more participation. However, that will also mean the industry in the next foreseeable few years will go through a major transformation by means of merger and acquisition. So there will be a major consolidation industry-wide. So from their point of view, we feel we are actually at the leading edge of that change.
Sure. So on two sides, first off, new business. Rescheduling is going to open up the marketplace. It's going to bring more competition to the market, and so we see the opportunity for more customers. Right now, we primarily work with state chartered banks and credit unions, so we think that more of the institutions in that space will get involved. But we also think other players, other financial institutions and organizations that see an opportunity will be getting involved. So we just think it's going to be more business. On the other side, because we are a compliance-oriented company, more rules, more regulations, more ways to get in trouble, so to speak, we see an opportunity there. So our consulting division and our folks that do field audit surveys and site visits, we think we'll have a lot more activity.
Well, what's really exciting is that operators would be able to deduct costs of selling their product, right? So what you're talking about, marketing, payroll, advertising, for the purposes of federal income tax filings. So what's exciting about that is systems are going to be more valuable, and that's what we built, the systems. And so we're well positioned here because our ERP is the most robust tracking tool in the market. And so we're excited to leverage those features in a meaningful way. And our actually founders come from fintech. And so for them, the idea of building more automated payments, credit, enforcement of terms, all in the back of FDIC insured banking is really exciting. I also think it opens up the opportunity for multi-state expansion. It becomes more attractive when you have these write-offs and you have the opportunity to not have to copy and paste the exact model in each state. And so I think a lot of opportunities open up with the rescheduling.
Now let's explore the flip side of that. Are there nightmares that are keeping you up at night? How this change might affect your business?
Well, I think we need to make sure that we keep the eye on the prize and that, the industry doesn't become complacent thinking, well, 280E's gone away, so we don't have to worry about investing in federal policy reform or investing in the next state policy reforms that need to happen to be able to expand the industry and the political investment that's needed in not just associations like ours, but ensuring that, we're electing the right people to Congress who care about this issue, and then following up and making sure that they're hearing from us so that they know that, as members of Congress that have their, hundreds of issues that they're dealing with, even those who support us are very, they're very, their bandwidth is stretched very thin. And so we don't want a situation where our friends in Congress think, okay, well, the Biden administration did rescheduling. I can ignore the cannabis issue and move on to 50 other things on my plate. We need to make sure that they know that this is a step in the right direction, but there is a lot more to do. And it's going to be the industry's job to make sure that happens, because if those of us who have a stake in seeing this industry succeed aren't there advocating for that to happen, it's not going to happen. So I think the only concern or fear I would maybe have in this moment is that those of us in the industry and our allies on Capitol Hill become a bit complacent. We can't let that happen.
It's kind of like a welcome to the NFL moment where the stakes are kind of get heightened once you have the federal government kind of looking into your advertising. Right now, the one comparison to make is in cigarette sales, there are like FDA marketing orders where the cigarette companies have to kind of apply for, hey, we're going to be marketing in this way. And, I think that's something that would be pretty challenging for the cannabis industry. But, I think the flip side is that interstate commerce will help the growth.
So this is the first time in my experience that the federal government has said to an industry, hey, we are now going to regulate you, and the industry is excited. I don't think people in this industry realize what federal regulations really mean. And on one hand, they're very important. On the other hand, be careful what you wish for. There may be regulations in place, once they put them in place, that they actually enforce them. Today, although it's illegal, they leave us alone. And the physicians and the dispensaries can really do whatever they want, and the federal government ignores the practices. Once they implement rules, whether that's about what they can be dispensed for, who can dispense them, there might be rules about labeling and what has to be on these labels. I think the industry might be shocked at what happens when the federal government says, okay, good news, you're legal. Here's how you can now do that. And they may be inconsistent with the current rules, which could create some hassles and troubles for not only the operators in the industry, but more importantly for the patients. So I agree that in the short term there may be some hiccups. In the long term, it's all good news. In the short term, there may be some trouble adapting for some states and some operators and some physicians in trying to comply with the rules. And the rules will change even once they're rolled out and implemented by the federal government. There will be an evolution like everything else, and so we'll have to see how it plays out. But that's the nightmare in the short term is they walk and say, hey, good news, you're legal. You can now only sell it for pain or only sell it for anorexia or something like that.
The negative side of this is that there will be more control established as the medicine is understood, and the opportunities that are allowed in cannabis to heal diseases will be limited. Right, in these THC percentage applications, etc. But what makes all the other good feels is that knowing where the industry is from and where it's at, and that they can't stop the things that have occurred. And so they're going to have to find a way to integrate all of these businesses and people paying taxes and good Americans that have abided by these rules in all these states with all their regulations to the hemp industry, and now the opportunities that are being exposed in that through all of the farm bill applications that are allowing for more THC in the public environment, even in the states where marijuana is still not legal and or even a medical program. So you can go down the street here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live, and buy everything to get you high on marijuana or just like marijuana in hemp. And that's allowable through the understanding of how this plant works and the people that have been innovating it. The fear is that they will then try to do all these things to put more control regulations on it. But companies have been established, investors, there's stock exchange, IPOs that are out there. It would completely affect too much negatively, so the fear of the big takeover is not what I see in the future. It's going to be about integrating the right people that have been completely dedicated to this, and that's what's getting sorted out, unfortunately. And the way they've put everything in place is completely cannibalized our industry, and it's sad because you don't see lawsuits against marijuana companies against the federal government. You see marijuana company against marijuana company, and hemp company against hemp company, and these lawsuits are all going around. And that's the way they, formed that whole thing, right? Everybody had a fear of Prop 64 in California coming from Prop 215. I'm sure in Colorado it was the same. These different props that come out and all these different levels that they're going to allow. And then one company tries to take a stronghold of it and rework all the legislation to benefit them. And at the end of the day, none of it works because all of it continues, anything negative around it continues to embolden the black market. And everybody knows that the way and the path towards getting rid of the black market is legalization and having full access of this plant.
I only think of our legacy market that sort of gives me a little nightmarish, and how they may try to go around it and maybe try and drive themselves into that market. So I'm not 100% sure. No real nightmares on my end, but as far as Bermuda, I think it may have some fallbacks in, like I said, in regards to the legacy market. I think that's where we'll find our situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing there's a few things that we've learned about cannabis. First, most of the analysts are wrong. Things never move as quickly as they would like them to. I think the real nightmare is around potential lockup around litigation. If we start seeing rescheduling during this kind of commentary period, just get bombarded with all types of litigation and everything slows down, that would be, I think, absolutely devastating to the industry. And then I think, again, like it's not rescheduling to 3 doesn't make cannabis federally legal, right? We still have people locked up in prison for cannabis. So, while this is a nice step forward, and I think at this point the industry will take any positive step forward we can get, it's certainly not perfect, and I still think that there's quite a bit of work left to do.
So I think with the rescheduling, naturally the FDA will get involved. Federal level regulations will become norm. I think it will help consumers tremendously. However, we all know too, anytime regulations like that take place, it would be a major bureaucratic exercise and process. It will slow down the business side tremendously. So to answer your question, I think what really keeps me up at night is about how this will make our daily decision making and operations and life a bit more cumbersome with more regulations. But all in all, I think it will benefit the industry by having more federal level standard for safety and protection of consumers.
That's a good question. I don't think there are any really negative sides to it. It's just so much is yet to be determined. We've heard a lot of talk about big pharma possibly getting involved, given that it's rescheduled to a Schedule 3. So it depends on what players get into this ecosystem, on how it will actually impact everybody. But I do think there's the possibility for some negative outcomes. I just don't know at this point.
My biggest fear is that people are just going to remain stuck in the past. They're not going to want to change. And as a result, as this industry grows, which I know it will, as more states begin to adopt the idea of allowing cannabis and so forth, just the issues that are happening now, the health issues and other things, they're just going to get greater and greater. So from my perspective, we need to find a way to not just promote the products and what we're offering, but as you said in the very beginning, we need to do a better job of educating as well. Because, once people understand the underlying philosophies behind the biosecurity concept in general and why it makes sense and the true benefits behind it, I think they will realize that, yes, we need to take a different approach and so forth. But that's been my biggest fear is that, it's not going to change and the industry is going to grow much quicker than people realize. And then as a result, the issues are just going to continue to grow until somebody finally, finds a way to put a stop to it.
Well, there's a lot, right? Because we're not exactly sure how this is going to be rolled out. But I mean, more regulation probably means more taxation, not less. So that's a thing to be concerned about. I think the biggest nightmare is neighborhood and grassroots operators being driven out of business by big pharma, like patient rights, access to medicine. That's really, the core of the birthplace of California cannabis. And so, of course, that's a really large concern. Then we also have to understand that this means the FDA is coming. So, what does that mean? What does that look like? It introduces a lot more uncertainty.
Now, give us the inside scoop. How is this rescheduling going to directly hit your operations and change the way that you're doing business?
Yeah, so the initial impact will be that it will raise awareness. You had President Biden release a video celebrating the move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. That's tremendous publicity and awareness of the program. And so anytime we have news, good or bad, this is certainly good, but any news about the program, it raises awareness. It causes people to ask the question, could I benefit from that? Who do I know who's benefiting? So it just increases the awareness and the people that are willing to try it to see what a positive difference it can make in their life. And that's good for everybody. That's good for business, and it's good for all the potential patients who could be benefiting from this medication. So that's the big scoop. In the states where it's not allowed, I think that will cause, to your point, the uproar of the public. In virtually every state, we have seen marijuana legalized either recreationally or medically because the population has said to the legislatures and to the government, either through a referendum or just a public support, this is something we want. I think that pressure will continue to grow in the holdout states that don't have the programs, or the holdout states that have restricted programs. The public opinion will continue to be more and more in favor of this, and so it will be inevitable that the government will have to follow along and promote policies and rules and legislations that allow people access to the medication they're looking for.
Well, like I said, what is hard right now is opening up a bank account with the word cannabis in it. So, first of all, hopefully that would change. And then to be able to facilitate businesses to be able to exchange the money correctly, I think that would be a benefit as well. And I know with Bermuda, I love my island. I love my island, but we have a lot of small minded people. And I feel that the education piece is what's missing here. And once they get educated on the possibilities, like I said, medical tourism, we can do, I mean, it's just, I can't let you in on everything, but it's just so many things that we can do once this occurs. And it will have a trickle effect. Our bankings will work out, then we can open more businesses, then our island can flourish, we can get out of debt. There's so many things that could occur, and simply just by through education.
Really knows. I think we have a long time. These regulations and with rescheduling, it's going to take a long time before we filter out, the do's and don'ts and how this works. But I think on the outside, 280E is going to be an immediate change. I think banking they're standing there waiting. I mean, if you really visualize this, and I know like with our bankers and my personal banking, everybody's super excited about being able to have, this be open. So they're standing at the doors. With their arms out, ready for us. So I think that's we're just really excited about that, being able to have in our stores, being able to have regular transactions take place and credit cards and everything that it's just once again on that other side of normalcy is where we're super excited to get to.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think for some of the boutique, some of the more craft brands and grows, I don't think it will have much impact on them. For us, Conception, we're built on scale, right? And for us to be able to recognize economies of scale, it has a profound impact on our business, especially, again, we talked about interstate commerce opening up, but just in general, I think opening up capital for our customer base, for distributors, for new equipment, for growth, and that's going to have the biggest impact for us. Banking is going to be huge. Increase in M&A activity with outside groups coming in. We think it will have a nice impact and will obviously be a net positive. But it's not going to happen overnight, and I think it's naive to think that all of a sudden the spigot's going to turn on and capital will pour into the industry. It will be. It will take potentially years before we really start feeling all the positive effects of rescheduling.
We, on the receiving end of the cash, we will be paid more timely. That will help us with our cash flow. It's been a key challenge facing our cannabis a sector of our business, that is collecting money from customers on time and the cash flow. So that will help tremendously. Now, on the other hand, with banking services being more available, I'm certain many other opportunities that does not exist today would become more available for the industry, and simply because of the
Sure.
financial
I
support.
think a lot of the customers in the legal cannabis space right now still have concerns for their privacy and for the number of hoops that they have to go through for legal access. And I think it's something that needs to be considered, that with the rescheduling, there could actually be more oversight. There could be more restrictions. There could be more, I guess there could be a greater deal of regulatory control that makes that space or that that commerce feel more confined or more obtrusive.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I will say, though, that will impact us from a financial perspective, though, is, coming into a new market like cannabis. People are expecting us to show proof in this industry that our products work. Okay, we've had it proven in healthcare, animal health, even in food packaging and food processing in the agricultural markets, so forth. But in the cannabis industry, again, this is new. So a lot of them are wanting and expecting testing to be done in this market, with the cannabis product and so forth. So we're going to have to make an investment and work with companies, packaging companies, processors, whatever, to do that proof of concept in this market. So yes, from that perspective, there will be an impact. But again, ultimately, once we have all of that, then it will begin an upward swing for everybody, us included. And that's when we're going to see the financial gains. But, it's got to be the pain before the gain.
I mean, our hope is that more operators can afford to invest in their business because there's write-offs involved there. Our ERP is a book of record for our enterprise clients. And so, again, being able to use these systems, we're hoping that more people are going to be willing to invest in them. When your data is stored properly, when it's, represented and reported legally, it's an important aspect of what's going to be required. And then I think on the product touching side, being able to have a sound tax strategy and having the right tools in order to do that is going to be a really big, important part of this. So that's the impact that we're expecting. But of course, there's a lot of unknowns there.
Now brace yourself. How is the red tape dance going to change your business as it relates to cannabis with new federal regulations and rules?
Well, I mean, again, the industry as we know it will not be complying with federal law when it comes to dispensing Schedule 3 drugs. Schedule 3 drugs need to be approved by the FDA, prescribed by a physician under very strict limitations, and then dispensed through a licensed pharmacy. And so, the industry as we know it, which, we already have almost half the states that are allowing for adult use where they're treating it like alcohol, it's just not going to match up. So, I think that we do have a very good chance of seeing a situation where Schedule 3 does allow pharmaceutical companies a better avenue to create cannabis products, probably single molecule cannabinoid derived products, but continue to have a state-based industry that we have today that's respected by the federal government. And the federal government has not been actively undermining state laws today under Schedule 1 in the Biden administration and not in the Trump administration. I don't think there's a good chance they're going to just start all of a sudden, trying to undermine state laws. And so I think we're going to continue to have two systems: pharmaceutical path, which is very small for a very limited number of people, and I don't see as a real competitor to what we're doing in the cannabis industry. And then whole plant cannabis being, primarily regulated by the states and available to adults over 21 and medical patients.
I mean, it's been hard just since I've been in this past year, and trying to get our lawmakers in a room, that's a task in itself. To be able to get a call back, that's a task in itself. So I cannot imagine what's going to happen once the rescheduling takes place, because you're going to get a lot of people coming at them trying to figure out, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And if they don't know and they're not open and educated, they can't make those informed decisions. So my thing is, we need to tackle the regulators where they're at, because they're the ones holding that red tape that needs to be lifted off.
I'm not an expert on Schedule 3 businesses. I'm semi-familiar with them. We have clients that work with Schedule 3 controlled substances now. I know that they require pharmacists, so I could see there potentially being sort of a run for pharmacists at dispensaries. And I could see it's going to be very interesting, I think. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of state-level businesses that are not medical now that try to become Schedule 3 compliant, but also remain legal on the rec market and on the state level. I'm really have no idea how this is going to work because there still is tension, and there still are these existing frameworks of state laws that most of the businesses that exist now are set up for. So I Schedule 3 drugs, the federal government is very used to regulating, no problem. Schedule 3 drugs that are also regulated on the state level with various different patchworks of state licensing schemes and things like that might be more complicated. We all got to wait and see, I guess. But I will reiterate also, descheduling is the simplest. There's really no reason that cannabis is on the Controlled Substances Act list at all. It does not make any sense. And really, the best thing, I'm grateful to President Biden for being the first president to come out and say the things that he has said, especially despite his history. But I really still do urge him to reconsider rescheduling and just go for descheduling. That would be a bigger political win. It would be better for us. It would be better for everyone.
What we've read up to this point, and I think what we believe is there's still a lot that's unknown. There doesn't seem to be anything that indicates there will be additional red tape layered in. That said, right, the feds are have a reputation for adding in extra red tape. So who knows? What's the trade-off? I couldn't tell you which one's a pro or the con. I do think you do see a lot of these companies that are just kind of hanging on by a straw or have these large, expensive debt or large tax burdens. Restructuring those in exchange for a little bit of bureaucracy, I think, is a pretty fair trade-off.
Red tape, I think, certainly has its drawback. It will slow things down. It will make innovation slower. However, we all understand too, the core reason for much of the red tape is really about consumer. It's really about consumer safety. We all know there will be questionable and bad actors in the industry, right? They won't go away overnight. It will be through consumer education. It will be through compliance to regulations that over time, majority of the bad actors will disappear. And over time, as consumers become more aware, better educated, as regulations become more clearly defined, I think it will benefit the whole industry in terms of
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is we're seeing an opportunity, and we'll see an increase in requests for service from financial institutions as well as legal cannabis businesses. So our sales and marketing staff are really ramping up to be prepared to be as available, be as prominent, and as service oriented as possible. I think we're also going to get a lot of questions from our existing customers on, hey, how is this going to impact us? Will this change the way that we have to operate? Is it going to impact the level of service that we get from OSS? And from our end, we think this is just a great opportunity to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, we realize that, from an education perspective, this whole red tape scenario, with the government, it's going to be a very slow tap dance, introducing rescheduling to begin with, but slowly, introducing new regulations, new policies, and so forth. So from my perspective, that's actually a good thing because it gives us an opportunity to now rethink our strategies, reformulate our approach to what we're trying to do in the cannabis industry to make a difference, and then get the education and everything going. So by the time, like you just said, everything ramps up, more states come on board, and more people are seeing the advantages to using cannabis the right way. We'll finally see fewer of those issues. So it can actually turn out to be a good thing for the general population.
I mean, I would really love to see, again, like a diverse amount of voices chiming into the federal government to say, this is our experience. This is what you should be doing. And having a state government be alongside and say, yes, this worked. like that having a dispensary in a locality did not lead to deaths or lead to these, absurd scenarios that actually led to economic growth, and it led to revitalization of certain storefronts in city blocks, and having a dispensary in a town square is actually a really good thing for that town square as far as economic revitalization. Those are the comments we should focus on, and we should be throwing those at the federal government. Like, this is a positive change. I mean, and to not do that is to our detriment for two reasons. Like, if you're not at the table, you're what's for dinner. So we don't want to get eaten alive. We want to be the ones at the table. And then if we do not kind of put our best foot forward and talk about the regulations that we want to have, we're going to end up with regulations that we don't want. So it's not that they're going to be like you said before, like there's not going to be not regulations. Like, it's going to be a regulated market. That's the nature of the beast. We just have to be able to shape that discussion. And we have 38 states with a decade or more of experience. Not every state, but in some, and a great story to tell. So.
One of the great things about being a tech startup is that we're well positioned to adjust to change. And so, day to day, being able to build features that are requested, having that small, nimble team that works quickly is an advantage to us. But, we have the FDA is coming, the new taxes are coming. We're going to build features for the industry as those things evolve. But then I also think, in terms of being part of the California cannabis community, we have to remember that there's decriminalization is still a long process. And so there's still people that are locked up for growing a plant. And so we can't lose sight of all of the kinds of red tape just because they're changing.